So in today's short video, we're going to talk about a neat little feature of the DJI Mini 2 SE. Now, the information in this video does apply to other manufacturers of drones, but specifically we're going to be looking at the Mini 2 SE, and that is the return to home function. So with that being said, let's get going. One of the beauties of having a drone with built-in GPS is it has the capability to pinpoint its exact location. In the same way that your car sat-nav does. It can precisely place you on a map, it can calculate your speed and your altitude. Well, the drone also has all this valuable information. The drone can use this GPS information in a number of ways. One of which is when it's not receiving any inputs from its pilot, it can hold its position pretty much exactly where it is, and that's because of the GPS. It knows exactly where it needs to be, and the drone will automatically make adjustments to its pitch, its altitude, in order to keep it exactly where it needs to be. It also allows the drone to automatically plot its own course. So when the drone takes off, it knows exactly where it took off from, and this is what we know as the home point. Now that home point can be changed, it can be updated to wherever you want it to be on the map, but for this example, its takeoff point is going to be the home point, and of course the drone knows exactly where it is in the sky. Now, with all that information, it's able to plot a course straight back to the home point automatically in the event that perhaps you lose sight of the drone, you lose your bearings, or even if it loses signal with the controller altogether, the drone will automatically know where to head back. So this is what is known as return to home, or RTH for short. But before we use the feature, we need to make sure we've got it set correctly. So let's have a quick look at that now. The DJI Mini 2 SE in particular doesn't have any collision avoidance sensors. It only has a sensor on the belly of the drone, and that is to detect the ground and the ground level conditions for auto landing. So we need to make sure that we set this return to home altitude correctly, so that we are avoiding any obstacles in the way, such as trees, buildings, power lines, anything like that. So we need to make sure that if that return to home feature is activated, that the drone is going to be able to fly straight back in a straight line above all these potential obstacles. When the return to home function is activated, the drone will automatically reorientate itself, pointing towards home. It will then adjust its altitude accordingly and fly in a straight line back to the home point. Once it reaches above the home point, it will then begin its descent and safely land. So of course it's doing this automatically, and in the scenario where it's lost perhaps signal with the controller, so you as a pilot have got no control over your drone, it's going to be doing this automatically, and we need to make sure that the return to home altitude is set correctly, because of course it's going to adjust itself and it's going to fly straight back. Now if there's anything in its way, it's not going to know about it, it's going to crash. So we need to make sure that whatever the tallest obstacle there is, the drone is automatically going to be flying above it and straight back. So let's have a quick look at how we set the return to home altitude. Okay, so to set the return to home altitude, very simple. On the home screen here, the three little dots in the top right hand corner, if we tap those, we've got a number of tabs along the top. The first one is safety, and right at the top there we have the auto RTH altitude. And it's here that you want to set the altitude that the drone will automatically send before making its journey back to the home point. So using the little slider, we can set that to whatever we want it to be. So in our case, we're going to set it at 50 meters. Once that's been set, you can literally tap off of that and you're all good to go. Once we've got satellites locked, we'll be able to take off, and we'll demonstrate the return to home. Okay, so we're down here at Pandy Park. This is the home of Tondi RFC, and this is where we're going to test the return to home feature. So obstacles we need to look out for here: the floodlights. We've got some trees and whatnot. Nothing too bad. Nothing too high. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set the return home altitude to about 50 meters to demonstrate. and we'll see how it goes. Alrighty, so let's get the drone in the air.
Takeoff. Home point updated.
There we go. So first thing the drone does as soon as it takes off is it automatically sets its home point. So that's perfect. So what we'll do now, some altitude and some distance. Weather's nice and calm. There's hardly any wind at all. So perfect flying conditions. So there we are, just heading out towards the Anasaudra Leisure Centre. Alright, and there we go. So, say for instance I've lost sight of my drone, I've lost my bearings, and I need the drone to return home. So what I'm going to do is hit this icon on the left hand side here, and then I'm going to choose return to home.
Return to home.
So the drone has now reorientated itself. It's going to adjust its altitude to 50 meters, which is what we set, and then it will begin its flight home. Now, what it's going to do now, once it's hovering directly above the home point, it will then start its descent.
Landing.
And there we go. The drone has safely returned home. So if I need to avoid any obstacles, why don't I just set the return to home altitude at 120 meters and be done with it? I'm 100% safe. I'm higher than anything around. Well, that may be the case, but there are some other important factors that need to be considered. Let's say, for instance, the tallest obstacle is 30 meters high. Is there any need to send it a further 90 meters before it starts heading home? One of the things we need to consider is the weather, more specifically wind speed. Now, at higher altitudes, it's likely that the wind is going to be a lot stronger than at lower altitudes. If we set our return to home altitude at 120 meters and it encounters perhaps a headwind, the drone is going to assume that it's going to be traveling at, say, 6 meters per second. But with a headwind, perhaps that's reduced to only 3 meters a second. Now, depending on your battery levels, that could be the difference between whether it makes it home or not. So, is it necessary to send the drone higher than it needs to? Probably not. Okay, so one thing I've learnt after recording this video was if you've set your return to home altitude at 50 meters, but you're already flying at, say, 70 meters or 100 meters, whatever it may be, when you activate the return to home function, it won't descend to 50 meters. It will stay at that altitude and fly straight back to the home point. So of course, if you do encounter any strong winds at the higher altitudes, you would need to descend manually, and then obviously let the return to home function carry on once you've reached 50 meters. Now, of course, if the drone has lost signal with the controller and you as a pilot have got no control now over the drone, the return to home function has been activated automatically and the drone is already making its way back. But of course, if there are high winds at that altitude, unfortunately you are at the mercy of the weather until hopefully the drone can re-establish contact with the controller and you're able to reduce the altitude manually. Unfortunately, you need to hope for the best. Whenever flying a drone, it's always good to be mindful of your environment and how that environment may change, how weather conditions can change, and of course if you're mid-flight, you need to remember that you might need to change these settings during flight. So I always think it is best to plan ahead. I mean, I want to look at where I'm flying my drone what obstacles are in the way before I've even left the ground. So I know that if I do get into a situation, I've panicked perhaps, or again I've just lost my bearings, I can just hit that return to home function, and I'm fairly confident that the drone is going to get back safe.